coincidentally, he heads what's called the CCCS, and I head what's called the C3S. So ours is the Chennai Center for China Studies, of which I am the director, and he looks at the Center for Contemporary Studies on China. And with first-hand experience, he's also a sinologist. He's been in China, and therefore I'm sure we will derive phenomenal amount of insights into why we are where we are today. And as far as I am concerned, I've been in the Navy for over 34 years. I was commissioned in 1969. So I saw war in 1971. Thereafter, I joined aviation. So where I commanded a squadron and 2 air stations. I was also part of the IPKF where I was commanding a warship. And I've been the regional commander of the Coast Guard Region East with jurisdiction in the entire area of Bengal. And since my retirement, that's way back in 2003, I've been part of many think tanks. I was with Observe Research Foundation initially, thereafter with Center for Asia Studies, and then I'm also part of the National Military Foundation as the regional director, and I've been the director of the Chennai Center for China Studies for the last 6 years. So we continue to depend on our resources, which consists of people from diverse backgrounds, IAS, IAF, professors. Our main strength is from the young minds. We have about 300 of them who are working with us on a virtual platform. And we also conduct many internship programs through the year. And this year was a record, thanks to COVID, where we had about 50 plus interns completing their summer internship programs. The focus is clearly China. And as I said earlier, this is the only think tank away from Delhi which specializes in looking at China. A peninsular think tank that has its focus to provide an alternate perspective. Not necessarily you need to be different from what Delhi thinks, but we would like to look at it very differently and provide those insights which are from these experts who we have with us as members, as well as the benefit of young minds who always try to probe and ask us questions, which is what we encourage in our think tank. Over to General Narasimhan.
Thank you very much, Commodore Vasan, sir. I was commissioned into the Madras Regiment, which is an infantry regiment, in 1977. Thereafter, I served for 40 years in the Indian Army before I retired in 2016. I did a tenure in Beijing as the defense attaché, and thereafter, for the last 20 years, I have been following China, and I have commanded formations, brigade, division, and the corps level formations on the Chinese border. Post-retirement, I also commanded the Army War College, which is supposed to be a premier institution for training in the Army. And after retirement, I joined the National Security Advisory Board in 2016. At the moment, I am doing my second tenure. In addition, I have taken over the as Director General of Center for Contemporary Studies in Delhi, which is a think tank started by the Ministry of External Affairs. It's a whole of government approach. The officers doing research with me are all serving Government of India officers drawn from various departments of the government. And this center has been in existence for almost 2.5 years now. And we do research on international relations, internal issues, and defense and security issues, science and technology, economy, and bilateral relations of China. So that is the way we have organized ourselves, and that is what the center does work on. And I'll open this. I'll request Commodore Vasan to open this discussion, and thereafter we'll take it from there.
Thank you, General Narasimhan. I don't think we could have found a better person to deal with this, who has first-hand experience along the border at different levels. And thereafter, having been in China, you will be able to think through their minds, which is always a difficult proposition for all of us. And what we will do today, this is the proposal that I have, is that initially we'll address three questions, which in essence will summarize as to what we want to do. How did we land up today in the position that we are in today? This is vis-a-vis China. What is it that we've done right in the past? And what is it that we could have done better in terms of dealing with an aggressive neighbor, China? And then, of course, what is the way ahead? When you're talking about way ahead, everybody tries to tell you that we are at crossroads. The problem with that is the crossroads have signs which are hazy, and we can't really see what these crossroad signs indicate to us. So perhaps we will have to write it ourselves and then choose the path that will be of importance to us. So I request you to set the ball rolling by giving us an overview of where we stand today. Thereafter, we will discuss the parameters of how we landed up where we landed up, and then move forward from there on. I am also very happy to inform the audience that Swatantra is encouraging a local app, an Indian app, Milan Setu, which is where we are networked, and that is being streamed by simultaneously. So we need to encourage our own, we keep on saying local for vocal and vocal for local, but unless we start using these apps, and keep giving them feedback, we'll not be able to bring them up to global levels. So I'm very happy and must compliment Swatantra for also using this app along with YouTube to reach out to the audience, who will definitely gain from today's interaction. And as the organizers have already indicated to you, you can send your questions on WhatsApp to the number that is given there, and they will choose the 5 best questions which are relevant, and then between General Narasimhan and myself, we'll try and answer those questions. Over to you, General Narasimhan.
Thank you very much, Commodore Vasan. If we want to answer that first question, how did we land ourselves in the position what we see today? I think then we need to go back into history, and that will take a very long time. But what I will do is I'll try and summarize it in 2 to 3 minutes so that we understand the basis on which we are working and how we have reached the situation as it exists today. The origins of this problem starts in 1954 when the Chinese made a western highway through the Aksai chain. And 1954 is also the year in which we published the first map of India with an entire Aksai chain and others included in our territory. There is a lot of historical basis for arriving at that map. I will not go into the details of it. If there is some questions which come up, I'll take it subsequently. 57 is the time we realized that this road has been made. And thereafter, we have been trying to send the patrols up to Aksai chain. In 1956, Chawanlal, who was the then premier of China, gave a claim line to India that they said that this is the line that comes up as territory of theirs. In 1959, he confirmed that line. So the 1956 and 1959 lines have been confirmed by the former premier of China to be their lines of the border that depicts their territory. In 1960, they gave a variation to that line, which was moving further little to the west of the line that they had committed in 56 and 59. Then came 62 war, in which at the end of it, the Chinese had moved further west of their claim line of 1959 and 1960. But at the end of the war, they went back into that area. Until today, from 1960 onwards, we follow that particular line as the claim line of China. And that line corresponds to the line of actual control in eastern Ladakh. So this is, in short, I have given you a rundown of how it happened and how this LAC has come into existence in Western Theatre.
Yeah.
Come to Eastern Theatre.
Yeah. General, a quick question in the interest of the audience. So we talk about McMahon Line.
I'm coming to that.
Yeah. Okay. Please.
I'm coming to that. When I said Eastern sector, actually McMahon, it is not McMahon, because we are used to the word. Yeah, we are used to the word Mohan, and so we keep saying Mohan, but it is McMahon, MAHON. So McMahon is a Britisher who drew this line east of Bhutan up to Myanmar, and that line is known as McMahon Line. And McMahon Line was also ratified. I won't say ratified. It was signed by the British rep, the Tibetan rep, and the Chinese rep in 1914 as part of the Shimla Accord. and the Chinese have not accepted that line. Therefore, you have a dispute on the McMahon line, and that McMahon and Chinese claim the whole of Arunachal Pradesh till the foothills of Assam as their territory. So this is the McMahon line in the east, and in the Ladakh sector, as I told you, it is the claim line of China, and in Sikkim in between, where this incident happened on the 9th of May, in Sikkim, that time it was Sikkim, it was a kingdom, and there was no dispute in territory between the kingdom of Sikkim and Tibet. Therefore, the portion of Sikkim, we consider it to be international boundary. Rest of the areas, we consider to be line of actual control. So that is how the line of actual control has come into existence. So this is where you have this problem. And thereafter, what has happened, in about mid-70s, there was a China study group. It still exists in a larger form today. At that point in time, it consisted of only 3 secretaries of the state government of India and a couple of representatives of the RNDW and the IB. And these are the people who gave the limits of patrolling. It is known as limits of patrolling basically because beyond which the patrolling was not allowed. And those are the patrol points which you get to hear now. You must have heard about PP14, PP15, PP17, etc. And these are the patrolling points that have been laid down around that time. Thereafter, periodically they were reviewed. Wherever we could go ahead, it was revised. The patrolling points were revised. So this is the patrolling points and the origin of patrolling points. And this is the line of actual control we have got. Now, regarding the resolution of the boundary, after the 62 war, till about 76, we did not have diplomatic relations. Diplomatic relations were there, but the embassy was actually downgraded. We didn't have an ambassador there. In 1976, Mr. K.R. Narayanan went as the first ambassador. And thereafter, first ambassador after that break that was there, thereafter things started improving. In 1988, Mr. Rajiv Gandhi made that famous visit of his to Beijing, where he met the supreme leader at that point in time called paramount leader, they call it, as Mr. Tan Xiaoping. And thereafter, the bilateral relations started improving. In 1993, the first agreement we signed with them was the Border Peace and Tranquility Agreement. That happened when Mr. Narasimha Rao went to China. In 1996, we signed the Confidence Building Measures Agreement when Mr. Chiang Samin visited India. And thereafter, there was, in 1993, after that first agreement was signed, in 1994, we set up 2 joint working groups, one from the Indian side and one from the Chinese side, to resolve the boundary issue. They had about 14 meetings in between them. Still, progress was very slow. To speed up the process, in 2003, when Mr. Vajpayee visited Beijing, at that time, they came to an understanding that from each side, they will nominate a special representative. And the special representatives came into existence in 2003. And thereafter, they were supposed to go through a 3-stage process of resolving the boundary. First stage was the political parameters and guiding principles which were supposed to be set up. And that agreement we signed in 2005 when Mr. Wen Jiabao, the former premier of China, when he visited Delhi in April 2005, we signed that agreement. Thereafter, the second stage started. The second stage is the toughest stage, basically because then we need to work on the principles under which at each of the locations you will identify the boundary. So that is the toughest part which is going on at this point, and you find that 23 rounds of talks have taken place. 23rd round was being virtual just about 10 days ago, on not about 10 days, a week ago on the 5th of July. Before that, 22 special representative talks have taken place. Basically, they are trying to set down the principles under which we will be able to resolve this boundary. And this is a tougher part. Thereafter, the third part will be to actually demarcate the boundary as per the principle that have been agreed in the stage 2. That means in a 3-stage process, we are in stage 2. That is how we have landed up in the situation. In between, the line of actual control is not an accepted line between both the sides, between India and China. Therefore, we started a process of clarifying the LAC in 2000. In the middle sector, we exchanged our maps showing perception of the line of actual control as per each side. But when we wanted to exchange the maps in the western sector, the Chinese backed off. And thereafter, our efforts to get them to clarify the line of actual control have not borne fruit. So that is where the problem lies. And therefore, since you do not have an agreed boundary between India and China, whenever the patrols come across in the border, you find these face-offs taking place. Coming to the face-offs, I'll start from 67 when Nathula and Chola Nathula and Chola incidents came up, wherein when we were wanting to lay a barbed wire line in Nathula, the Chinese opened fire on the Indian forces. The Indian forces retaliated, and the casualties on the Chinese side were very heavy at that time. That gave the indication to the Chinese that even though in 67 we suffered a defeat, the armed forces are back to normal in 67 and can give them the kind of reply that they didn't expect. Thereafter, between 67 and 86, there were hardly any incidents. There were minor face-offs on the border, which was resolved at the local level. In 86 in Samdrumchu, the Chinese came in. Samdrumchu is a post which our intelligence bureau used to hold, and they used to vacate that post for winters. When they went back in the next summer, they found the Chinese had come and occupied that post. So then Indian Armed Forces launched Operation Falcon and Operation Checkerboard by General Sundarji at that point in time, and we surrounded the Chinese from three sides. But after 7 years of negotiations, the Chinese went back and we also pulled back. So therefore, it took 7 years to resolve the Samdrumchu issue. Between 1976 and 2013, again, there were no major incidents. And the incidents were resolved locally by the tactical commanders. From 2013 onwards, you find an increase in the incidents, particularly in major incidents. 2013 in Depsang Belt, which you would have heard during the last 2 months, the Chinese came in and pitched up tents. We also pitched up our tents opposite to them to force them out, and 3 weeks later, they withdrew. In 2014 in Chuma, again, Chinese came with heavy road building equipment. We opposed it. The face-off took place for 2 weeks and then they withdrew. In 2017, I don't have to tell you what happened in Dolam, and Dolam incident is well known. I will not dwell on it further. In 2020, again in Ladakh and Galwan, as well as in Panpungso and in Nakula in Sikkim, these incidents have taken place. Panpungso is not new to these incidents. When Dolam incident was happening in 2017, you found in Panpungso for the first time, both the forces actually resorted to stone pelting. That was the first time the violence levels increased. So from 2013 onwards, you find Ladakh being in focus more and more, and these kinds of incidents have been increasing in violence. And that is how we have landed up in the situation that we landed up ourselves in today. The second thing is, in the last 2 months, whatever has happened, all people have read all kinds of things which has been coming in the media. What typically happened was on 5th of June, both these places, Galwan as well as in Panpungso, the Chinese came up in larger numbers. There were scuffle between the forces. Both the sides suffered injuries. Then they actually had a standoff, and that standoff continued till 15th of June. And it is continuing till today in some form, but till 15th of June, that standoff was there. In Nakula, in Sikkim, on the 9th of June, there was again a face-off like this, wherein the Chinese claimed an area inside our territory up to the area called wall. This wall is actually made by the glaciers to protect themselves from the high-velocity winds that actually are in that area. To protect their cattle as well as protect themselves, they put up a temporary wall. Chinese claim that this wall was made by the glaciers, and so therefore they should have the area up to that place. But Nakula is the place where the watershed goes, and all along the border between India and China, we go with the watershed principle, wherein the water pots on either side of the ridge line is the watershed. And watershed is the principle on which we actually deal with this border situation. So therefore, in Nakula, the claim is absolutely unsubstantiated. But in line of actual control in Ladakh, up to the line of actual control, they want to exercise their control. That is the reason they pushed it. And the reason for that was the kind of infrastructure that we are making in that area. That seems to have upset them, and they didn't know our intentions of making this infrastructure. Therefore, this problem has come up. And when I say infrastructure, I don't mean the DSDBO road, Darbuk Shiok Daulat Beg Oldie road. DSDBO road is on the western bank of Shiok River and is well within our territory, and it has been in the making for more than a decade now. So there was no objection on that. The objection was for the infrastructure that was being created east of it towards the LAC. So that is the issue that seems to have worried the Chinese, and the incidents happened. 15th of June incident, you're all aware what happened, and the people, lot of talks have taken place between the Lieutenant General level talks that took place on the 6th of June. On 15th, this incident happened in Galwan. 17th, the foreign ministers of both the countries spoke. 22nd and 30th. 22nd and 30th, there were two talks by the Lieutenant Generals again. They decided to disengage. That was also pushed up by the NSA level talks on the 5th of July. So this is where we stand as of today. So the way ahead at this point in time is, I'm not going through the overall relations, but with reference to incidents, I will finish it here. Thereafter, I will take on the questions by Commodore Vasan again. First process is the disengagement, and that process has been going on for some time now. From PP-15 and PP-17, troops are thinned out from the Chinese side. PP-14, there has been a withdrawal of both the sides, and Pankung Show, there has been a partial withdrawal from Finger 4, and that process is on, will continue. The issue that comes up is, it is a step-by-step process, and many of us tend to believe that once the talks are over, next day everything should be disengaged. And that is not the process that will work. It is going to be a step-by-step process. Each step is going to be verified by both the sides, and thereafter another meeting will be held to ensure that this disengagement takes place in a proper manner, in a step-by-step manner. So I for one believe it will take some time. We need to wait patiently, give a chance to the Chinese, even though on 15th June that incident happened, but verify what they are doing. So trust but verify is the way to go from now on, at least till the situation gets back to status quo ante as it existed in April 2020. I will stop here. Vasan sir, if you have any more questions, please come up with it so that we can discuss it. Is he around?
Yeah, we have lost his video, and both his audio and video seem to be muted. So I don't know.
Okay. Anyway, let me.
Okay, so I would like to throw my questions here.
Yeah, please do.
What is our take on China's constant moves against our Arunachal Pradesh region? So, and second question will be, maybe I can ask the second question after you answer this one, because there is
okay. China's constant move to ALP is something which we should understand from those from the 1914 Shimla Accord, which I mentioned to you. They do not accept the McMahon Line, which was established in 1914. There are also reasons for it. One of the reasons is that that line was marked with a felt pen and in a large scale map. And when you do it on a felt pen, even the thickness of that line indicates approximately 20 kilometers on ground. So in many places, it led to a lot of disagreement on the alignment of the line of actual control. So therefore, that is one point. The second point is, in 62, when the war happened, they actually came almost up to the foothills of Vasan. But they knew that they could not sustain themselves on this side of the Himalayas through the winter. And so they had to push back. They pushed back, but the claim on Arunachal Pradesh, they kept it alive. And in around 2004, 2005, they started calling it as South Tibet, Southern Tibet.
right.
And thereafter, recently, they have actually given the Chinese names for the districts in Arunachal Pradesh. So slowly and steadily, what has happened is the claim has been kept alive. But that doesn't mean that they will get Arunachal Pradesh as a part of it. So they can keep claiming whatever they want, but I don't think anything is going to happen on that score.
Yeah. So, but my question here is, if they don't want to go with the Shimla Accord, why should we? So then we can also claim their areas as ours, right?
See, the issue that comes up is, you need to go back to what I explained to you earlier. The problem was we were not able to extend our presence up to the areas which is shown on our map because of, you can say, the underdeveloped nature of the terrain there, because of the numbers were less with us, and so we were not able to do that. Infrastructure was lacking. Even if you pushed up the troops, you wouldn't be able to sustain them. Therefore, many number of reasons led to we not dominating the area up to which we claim it to be our territory. And that gave Chinese the leverage. Because on the Chinese side, the terrain is very simple. It is a flat plateau and they could drive anywhere they want. So it is the terrain that helped them to actually come and claim that area which they've claimed in Ladakh. But what happens is, if we agree to 1914 Shimla Accord, then you also get Arunachal Pradesh, you also get Exchequer. And therefore, we should follow definitely the Shimla Accord, whether the Chinese follow the Shimla Accord or otherwise.
If I can just chip in.
Yeah. So you can,
Ramesh, 1 second.
yeah. No, sir, we were waiting for you. So till then, I was asking.
So there was a disconnection. Oh, thank you for that. There's a
No,
disconnection of the internet. So I had to come back. Thank you.
Over to you.
No problem. Thank you, General Narasimhan. Sorry for that brief interruption. And there was a technical blackout, so I had to re-log in. Sorry for that. But I heard the whole thing, and I think it's a wonderful exposition of why we reached where we are. This is in terms of the border, in terms of the line of actual control, but also in terms of the CCL. That is the Chinese control line. You know, there are far too many things which are there. And my own, 2 paisa worth assessment is that very simple. By and large, all of us analysts agree that China has been using this salami slicing, which is a term that everybody understands now. That means you walk in 3 steps, go back 2 steps, negotiate, wait for another time, come back again. So this goes on all the time. So this is where they have taken advantage of the ground reality. Even over here, General Narasimhan will vouch for it. Even here, apparently there is an annual summer exercise that takes place. And this time we knew that they were doing this exercise, but quietly, because of the COVID, while India's attention was drawn to containing the pandemic, they pitched their tents, as they said, and after the exercise, they did not go back. So, there were a lot of things that are amiss over here in terms of the assessment at the strategic level and the tactical level. But what I would like to also add is that there are a lot of other contributions at the global level as to why we are today where we are. This is in terms of China's aspirations, its ambitions to be number one. It is not looking at India. In fact, some of the statements that have been made earlier referred to China taking over as Asia's number one. They are not set their sights at Asia. They are looking at replacing America. And the West, which was predominantly a democratic way, encourage China to integrate in the mainstream of democratic system so that it becomes a major player in the global order. This was something that everybody expected to happen. It has not happened. And, China has carved its own, path in terms of so-called peaceful rise. Everybody, bought this term of peaceful rise. And, unfortunately, it's not been a peaceful rise. And they are very good in following their own leaders, Confucius, Sun Tzu, and all that. So here it was question of biding for your time, building your strength, and challenging anybody at an opportune time. I'm sure General Narasimhan would be more aware than me, as I'm not proficient in Chinese, on the Chinese proverb, which apparently says, loot your neighbor's house when it is on fire. So which is exactly what they tried to do when, the COVID pandemic was being tackled around the world.
So only here that they have set the fire also in the neighbor's house.
So in South China State is the same thing. So when everybody was trying to unite together in their war against the pandemic, and they tried to use this time to consolidate their gains in South China Sea, needle their neighbors, including Japan, Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia. There is not a single person who has not been needled by them when it comes to territorial claims. In fact, there's also been a famous charms offensive by the present ambassador, who I am sure General Narasimhan would have met. So this charm offensive you would have seen on the TV yesterday, the day before, when to say that we are two ancient civilizations, we should not be in that war, we should protect either interest. All this is to be taken with a bag of salt, because it's very simple that they are trying to now get out of this tricky situation where they are cornered by the rest of the world. It's becoming increasingly difficult for them economically. Huawei is facing tough problems because everybody is kicking out Huawei from their backyard. UK has taken a lead of the 10 teams, 10 democracies who are going to come together to have new technology platforms. Ericsson, Cisco, and others are coming into the front. Italy has also now kicked out. Italy was a staunch supporter because of BRI investments. They kicked out. So China is in a bit of a spot when it comes to their economic ambitions. BRI is falling out of the sky. India did a very wise thing by not supporting the Belt Road Initiative. We abstained from participating even in the BRF as a Belt Road Forum. And everybody, there's a lobby here in India which wants to join BRA and continue to fuel China's ambitions. Which is why we are very fortunate that we did not support the BRA, because wherever they've gone, they're facing trouble, particularly now because of the COVID pandemic, where African countries and others where they have invested are asking for either a loan waiver or a deferment of payments. Even Pakistan, their all-weather ally, is having serious doubts about continued investment into the BRI. So, this is to put the global picture in perspective on why China is in a state that it is in and why it needs friends. But to start with, if you needed friends, why did you get into this misadventurism along our border? Because everything was going on smoothly. China, in fact, I would go to the extent of saying that India's leaders, including the present leadership, have been trying to be extremely nice to China. You looked at Mamallapuram, you look at Wuhan, you look at the Gujarat visit, and by and large, the expectation was that we will be joint partners. But all these expectations have been belied, unfortunately, and China has stabbed us in the back, just like they did in 1962. On the infrastructure, Lt Narasimhan is the best person to tell you. I visited these places about 3 years ago. Unfortunately, the phase of development on our side was not up to the mark. It's only in the recent, maybe 5-10 years, that it's accelerated, because we again have been always defensive. I'm sure General Narasimhan will either counter me or will support me on this. We always were so sensitive about the Chinese sentiments. What will the Chinese think if we build our thing? Even it's on our side. Even in Port Blair and Andaman Nicobar, there was this defensive mindset to say, no, we should not add on infrastructure because the Chinese are likely to be upset. So this is this defensive mindset that has encouraged China to use India to say one thing and do something else. So I think the time is right now, ripe for us to look at those crossroads that I mentioned in the opening remarks and to carve out our own path, which takes us away from this dependence on China. Everybody keeps on saying, what will you do without China? Please look at the number of, the trade deficit that we have. The trade deficit of something like $60 billion is something that it uses in China-Pakistan economic corridor. So your money is indirectly going to build up its defense assets, to fuel its ambitions along the economic route, along the Maritime Silk Route, along the BRI. Where is the obligation for India to support this at our cost? What has come inside in India? These are questions that the viewers must seriously look at. On which occasion have we been supported? The Nuclear Supplier Group? No. United Nations Security Council? No. Expansion of UNGA? No. Azhar Masood proscription? No. Where have we been supported by China? Is there a single occasion on which we have been supported? Where is our need for us to be so defensive? People are today defensive about Quad. Why are you so defensive? Does China ask permission of India, or does it keep you informed when it carries out a major exercise with Pakistan and Russia in North Arabian Sea, which is so important to us for our energy security, for our maritime security diplomacy? So yeah, he's virtually poaching in our backyard, and he doesn't tell you about it. So, but there are so much of serious objections when we say that US, Japan, Australia, and we need to be working together. From 2007, we've taken a long time to now even invite Australia after 2007 fiasco to get into the Malabar exercise, which is now going to happen sometime this year. So we need to get out of this defensive mindset look at a new path that is away from China. People also tell you that there's so much of extent of coupling with China, it will become difficult. I keep on telling my youngsters in Chennai Center for China Studies, no pain, no gain. So you have to be able to take some of these hard paths. And today, the climate is wonderful for India to ensure that its dependence on China comes down. People say, what will happen to pharmaceuticals? You'll pay a higher price. These API and other things, Gujarat today is taking a lead. And, we will face difficulties. This is where I would like to remind the audience that after the famous Pokhran blast, we faced sanction by the West after the nuclear explosion where we became a nuclear power. So we faced stiff sanctions. This was something like 3 years. And that's when India reinvented itself. So let's have faith in India's capability. How did this app come about that we are using today? It's because of the fact that there is a capability and capacity that is within, which we do not recognize, we fail to encourage, and we need to get out of this and start having belief in ourselves. It's only then it will take on China. China is now trying to cozy up to you again, trying to again take you up the rosy path, and please be careful of its attempts to get you back on its sides because it's isolated. I would like General Narasimhan to come back here and respond to what I said in terms of how we need to, carve out our own path, which is independent of China. Nobody is saying go to war with China, but we need to be able to have association when it benefits us, but dealing ourselves where in the long term it's going to harm us.
Commodore, before General takes it over, I would like to ask a quick question related to what you spoke about. The first one is, of course, a point that I would like to make is, of course, we keep on talking about the APIs for the pharma industry coming from China. The recent past, what we have seen is they have simply hiked the price by 20% because they wanted to make the best out of the situation. Whereas on the other front, if you look at it, what people fail to tell the world is that India is considered as pharmacy of the world, meaning including China, we are the largest suppliers of generic medicine, right? And even if we are exporting it to China. So, I mean, as you said, I think what people fail to see is that our own capability and then start believing it, rather trying to say that we are so much relying on China. It's like a mutual relationship. And coming back to another question I have is related to banking system. Recently, I've been told that China is kind of imposing some restrictions on their citizens withdrawing money from their Chinese banks, and so many other issues are going on. So if you could shed a light regarding that, any one of you, it would be of great help.
Since I have spoken enough, I'll ask General Narasimhan to respond. I'll come back again.
Thank you very much. Before I go and say what we should do, I will come on a few points which has been covered by Commodore Vasan. Salami slicing is something that we need to actually look at it in detail. We keep saying this, but if you go along the border, you will find that hardly any place where they have been able to make an ingress. They try to make that ingress. However, we have been steadfast in ensuring that these areas are not getting affected or not getting intruded by the Chinese whenever they tried this. That's all of Sundarumchu. It took us 7 years, but we ensure that they go back. So the issue that comes up is, till the time we don't have this agreed boundary, we will have these kinds of face-offs, and we should be prepared to ensure that no territory of ours goes to them. That is number one. Number two, as far as the COVID-related issues are concerned, now there have been lot of reasons attributed to the present problem that we face on the line of actual control. One thing says that we are going too close to US, and so they try to tell us that you shouldn't go too close by teaching us a lesson on the border. Second thing says that in the internal issues related to COVID, China didn't do well. They wanted to divert the attention. Therefore, they did this. My understanding of the whole thing is that this is a purely bilateral and a territorial issue. The other issues of aggressive behavior and all are not related to COVID. If you look at China's behavior in South China Sea, it has been aggressive over a long period of time. But even in August last year, you found they got into a scuffle with the Vietnamese Navy on the Vanguard Bank. And they later, around the winter time in December, January, they got into a tussle in Malaysia. They kept doing this all along. I don't think that is related to COVID, but that is related to an overall aggressive strategy that they follow. During COVID, you also found the wolf warrior diplomacy that they resorted to. All the ambassadors went on a overdrive, even calling names of the leadership in their host countries. So that is the kind of aggressive behavior that they had. But over the last 2-3 months, if you look at it, that wolf warrior diplomacy has gone down. There is no ambassador shouting from the rooftop, say, calling names on his host country. So there is a correction process that has taken place as far as the wolf warrior diplomacy is concerned. But as far as COVID is concerned, this is something that we need to again think about twice before saying that it is a diversionary tactic. The tactics was not diversionary because of that. It is typically ensuring that the line of actual control, they want to set foot and set that line. So that is something that we need to be careful about. As far as BRI is concerned, COVID has resulted in a slight delay of the BRI projects. About 40% of the projects are supposed to be facing problems. 20% of them are running as per the earlier schedule. And a reminder are expected to have little slow progress in their processes. So as far as BRI is concerned, we monitor this in the center on a monthly basis. We don't find a major upset happening. But where the major upset is going to happen on the One Belt One Road initiative is when all the countries are looking at either a debt rescheduling or debts to be converted into grants. That is where the Chinese are going to face a problem. But to overcome that, they've already rescheduled the loans of 77 countries. So this is something that they have taken care of. I won't rule out One Belt One Road. It will be slow. It will have problems, but I think it will continue to progress is the way I see it. As far as the decoupling from China is concerned, now this is a trend that has come up. Please take your mind back to Dolam. When Dolam issue was raging, the entire country said boycott Chinese projects, this thing, that thing, everything. 6 months down the line, everybody went back to China. Please, we should actually be aware of this particular problem with us. At that point in time, we should have started the indigenization process. We should have started the manufacturing process to ensure that we don't continually depend on China. But companies don't operate like that. Companies are looking at bottom line. Where the bottom line is better, they tend to go there. And that's what happened after Dolam. After COVID, again, there is a shouting for decoupling, basically because most of your manufacturing, including the pharmaceutical sector was mentioned, the automotive sector, and the electric, your LED sector, everything. If you have to produce a bulb today by Bajaj Electricals, the components have to come from China. Auto industry is depending on auto parts coming from China. We need to restart all these things in India. And that is where we go wrong. And we need to continue that process of indigenization so that we don't depend on China. On this, it will take time. If you are going to say, tomorrow I am going to stop everything, it is not going to work. We need to build our capacities and capabilities and thereafter decouple from them. In the meanwhile, we can also look at diversification of the sourcing. That will help us in some way to overcome the problem. Last 2 points, Quad. Quad, I think, is now shaping up. You need to look at the reports that have come up about a couple of days ago that Australia is going to be included in Malabar, and the initial tentative talks that took place between joint secretary level at various places have been upgraded to the ministerial level. I think slowly and steadily Quad is coming into shape. And lastly, the question which came up on China's citizens drawing money, etc. There is a problem in China today. When Xi Jinping came to power, he had a foreign exchange reserves of $4 trillion. That came down to $3.1 trillion over a period of time. Why did that happen? 2 things. One, in 2015, the Shanghai Stock Exchange collapsed. And people started taking the money out, and that money outflow was approximately $100 billion a month. It went on for 6 months. They lost about $600 billion in that. Plus, One Belt One Road initiative, the investment so far is approximately $340 billion. If you put these two together, you almost arrive at the figure of $3.1 trillion. And for the last 2 years, I've been monitoring this FDI, the forex reserves of China. It has stagnated and stabilized around $3.1 trillion, give or take a few billion this way, that way. So $3.1 trillion is what they had. The problem that they are finding is not the $3.1 trillion. The problem that they are finding is that their state-owned enterprises are not delivering as they were expected to deliver. That is one. Two, COVID has actually put down a problem regarding their exports. Initially, there was a supply shock in the sense that China closed down and the supply shock occurred. China then woke up. In the month of March, they started coming back to production, and now they're almost 97% back on production. The other countries have gone into the COVID shock. Therefore, they are now suffering from a demand shock. So the supply shock and the demand shock, they have to actually work on. They don't know which way it will go. This year, their GDP is expected to grow on 1.2%. That is the IMF rating. 1.2% is what it is supposed to grow, against 6.1% of last year. And so there is a downward trend in the economy. In order to protect that and in order to ensure that the people don't take the money out, this restriction has been imposed. The second point is you must see what is happening in Hong Kong. Hong Kong has been in turmoil for the last 1 year now. And that actually what has happened, US has put a lot of sanctions on Hong Kong, and they're not going to give the special status that they were giving it earlier. They are going to treat it as it is part of China. And if that happens, Hong Kong will lose the special status, and the round tripping that these people are resorting to from Hong Kong is going to suffer. So therefore, they need to take care of it. And these are the reasons why this particular issue has come up. Having said all this, now how do we deal with China? First thing that we need to do is, it has to, like for example, in the last month and a half, you would have noticed, there was a ruling on the FDI that the neighboring countries, if any FDI comes in, it will go through the government route and it will not go through any other route. Second thing is, you went and banned 59 apps. The problem with the apps is it is not money that we are looking at. We were looking at the national security and the data security. That is what actually made us stop the apps. The FDI route, the reason why we did that FDI one, using COVID, they were using predatory buying in Europe and India of startups and MSMEs. To stop that, we went and did that FDI business. In between, when this incident happened, there was enough pressure put on by them, particularly on the 15th June incident when they suffered more casualties. They had a pressure on them. So it is a whole of government approach that worked. The foreign ministers were talking, the defense people were talking, the NSAs were talking, and Prime Minister's visit to Ladakh also conveyed a strong message to them. So it is a whole of government approach that was adopted to ensure that this event, this incident that on the border are actually taken care of. Similarly, this is the way to go even in future to handle China. We need to tackle them at the international level diplomatically, which has been done very well during this period. We have to tackle them economically the way we said. We need to start indigenizing. We need to build our capacities and capabilities. We need to ensure that they do not get the leverage that we don't get. The problem that we find with China is not the tariff barriers, but the non-tariff barriers. And so we need, and that is the reason you will find in the ports these days, the Chinese equipment, the Chinese containers that come up go through a detailed scrutiny. Of course, there has got another problem because they also do the same scrutiny that side, and it delays your own exports also. But it is a whole of government approach that we need to do, and we need to tackle them on all fronts: defense, economy, political, and international relations. And that is the way to go.
General, another quick question. So you were comparing last time's Doklam situation when people said boycott Chinese thing versus this time. As you rightly pointed out, we are talking about this time government taking action against, let's say, the Chinese applications, or even the manufacturers associations or industry bodies taking the challenge of Chinese, saying that yes, we were taking your challenge and we will decouple on important areas. Right? A very simple example is when the COVID got hit, the entire car manufacturing segment stalled because they couldn't get the important components from Chinese manufacturers. But now they understand it. Of course, even though the entire car industry is in a deep troublesome situation, but in the past, whatever when we compare it to the previous situation, now I think situations are a bit different, isn't it?
I think so. There is when you do something repeatedly and you get hit repeatedly, you learn your lessons. I think that is what is happening. So the problem is that we need to continue with that process. We should not give up 6 months down the line by saying that, that gives me a good product and let me go and take it from there. So you find a lot of these railway contracts, a lot of the other contracts that have been actually cancelled in the recent past. There are two things for that. One is, of course, we didn't want to go to the Chinese route. Second thing also, we need to deprioritize our investment proposals and investment plan that we had. Both put together has resulted in this. So we need to look at this process on a long-term basis. Like, for example, it is not now that we realize that we are dependent on API, on China. 4 years ago, we realized it. 3 years ago, we discussed in the NSAB and gave our recommendations on how to overcome this dependency. But the problem is, and it is not that we are not manufacturing APIs before. We are a good manufacturer of API, a world leader in API production in India. And for the last 3 years, those factories are still not able to come back online to their previous levels because of various sanctions that has to be obtained, various licenses that have to be obtained, various environmental clearances that have to be obtained. I think we need to move fast on that and ensure that these impediments are removed. That is very important.
Yeah. Thank you, General. I think two important takeaways from what you have said. One is about, this normal accusation about salami slicing. And with a nation now which is totally has a free democracy, free press, everybody becomes an expert in satellite imagery. And, they go around saying one thing or another. And so therefore, I'm sure it's very...
And they go to the extent of calling an Indian helipad as a Chinese helipad.
Exactly. So I think this is where, unfortunately, this is the perils of democracy, where we given, this kind of freedom to the press. But, they go off tangent. So therefore, it's very reassuring to hear that Chinese have not succeeded in this so-called salami slicing, which they are saying, despite what many of the other like us to believe. The second thing is very valid in terms of how we need to shape our economic growth, by delinking gradually. That's an important point because last 2-3 days you have been seeing a lot of reports about how, even iPhone is planning to set up a factory near Sri Perumbudur.
Foxconn.
Through Foxconn of $1 billion. And then Japan went to the extent of even supporting people who wanted to move out by pledging something like $2.2 billion. So therefore, where there is a will, there is a way. So if India has to move out, and if he has to support people, I'm sure the policy formulation, as you also correctly identified, we failed in having the policies that help and promote local industry. And also this fascination for cheap products from China. In fact, before this incident, every month you would have tens of thousands of traders going to China and tying up their package and having them transshipped to India. So this is all about the demand and supply and the profit, the margin of profit that was there. We need to move away from this, and therefore I think, like I said earlier, the climate is ripe enough for us to look at alternatives, whether it is Huawei or 4G. Even 4G, since BSNL is government owned, they clearly said 4G will be tweaked in such a manner that China will not have a way. So 5G, as I see in my assessment, will not find anything over here, despite all these nice videos that Ambassador of China in India is putting out on a daily basis. He also wrote regularly in Hindu and other papers saying that it's a civilizational connect, we should do so much, etc., etc. So what we noticed is that they say something, but they don't mean it. So even if you know the Chinese language, it's difficult to interpret what they want to say or what they want to do. So there are many questions here. What I will do is, General Narasimhan, I'll read out some of the questions that Rama sent to me on WhatsApp. You can take them all together and respond because some of them are interrelated. I'll just read them out. This has come from the audience. Yeah. So this is right. This border crisis has exposed a range of national security problem in apparatus like deficient intelligence. These are some assumptions again, and deficient strategic assessment. The narrative looks like Chinese aggression came as a surprise to India. A question mark from my side on that. What happened to military satellite coverage, analytical interpretation of Chinese intentions by analysis and observer in India? This is from one of my researcher, Balasubramaniam. And now there are other questions. Pakistan as a factor in Chinese behavior towards India. This is from KM Gupta, basically to analyze how we can deal with Pakistan and China, who have this strong alliance. Then from Captain Kankoje, who is my old squadron mate, he's got 3 questions. Why are we not indulging in tit for tat salami slicing? I think that question has lost its relevance because of your clarification. And what is the military might to regain Aksai Chin and Shaskam Valley? So I can add here and to say, how does Article 370, come into play? And the third question is, where does giving recognition to Tibet, if we do, take us, and should we? And if so, when? So this is what we can do. I think initially the organizers planned for 15 minutes. We have overshot. I think it does not matter to me if the organizers have no objections. There's also one question from General. One second, let me see this. So I would like to take up this question because this is from a general who is familiar with this and who is a veteran here in Chennai. SR level talks agree to respect the LAC. Neither it is marked on the ground nor on any mutually authenticated map. Perceptions differ. So how this class can be assured? China claims it has well-defined boundaries with 12-14 neighbors except India and Bhutan. If so, why can't this be achieved in a homebound class? This is from Major General Karthikeyan. I'm sure you know him. So this is where the next question is on Indo-China relationship. It's always been poor and there's mutual distrust. Yet it's China which invests into India easily and heavily, including through state-owned enterprises. What makes China take such decisions? An outbreak of war could even lead to expropriation of their investments. Their action in the border area do not seem to factor such risks, and they seem to have decoupled the two issues. Maybe they have enough confidence in India that we won't take actions against it. So these are some of the questions that are here.
Commodore, specific to the Pakistan question, I also request you to add Nepal.
Sure.
Okay,
so,
fine.
Everyone will respond first on all these questions. And if there is anything that I would like to add to his question, I will do so. Are the organizers okay with extending the session?
Most welcome, Commodore. Most welcome, General. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Firstly, on the reshoring, which Commodore Vasan mentioned about, Japan has earmarked $2.2 billion for reshoring companies which they want to come back to Japan from China. Please understand, last year, Taiwan invested $18 billion to help companies to come back to Taiwan. US is planning to invest $25 billion to assist companies to reshore or divert, go elsewhere from China. Why I am saying this is, reshoring and decoupling like this also involves a lot of investment that we need to be prepared to do in case we want to attract some companies to shift from China and come to us to start manufacturing here in India. The second thing is, Chinese have this saying, don't look at what we say, look at what we do. So that is what we should be careful about. We should not actually worry about what they are saying, but actually we should look at what they are doing. And that is where we will find our answers to many of the questions that come up here. The third thing is on the border national security surprise. Now, I don't think there was a surprise. In fact, when these vehicles moved in, it was already known that these vehicles have come. And vehicles are, the moment any vehicles move like this, they get continued monitoring. So it is not that we were not aware of what these guys are doing, and the only problem that happened was the short distance that they had to cover to come into this area. That is what surprised us. Other than that, you find that whenever the build-up of the Chinese took place, we had an equal and matching build-up happening in those areas. So to that extent, I don't think we were taken by surprise or we were taken in, but I think the speed with which they had to actually cover a very short distance is the one which actually led to all this. The third thing is on the part China, Nepal. I'll add Nepal as one of the things which has been asked. Please understand, the present crisis in Nepal did not start because of Chinese inducement. Let us be clear about this. It started because of the internal problems that the present Prime Minister of Nepal is facing. And our Raksha Mantri, the Defense Minister, declaring the Lipu Lake Road open gave him a chance to whip up the nationalism to stay on in power. That is how the Nepal issue started this time. Contrary to the general belief that Chinese have induced it and Nepal has fallen into China's hands because of this they are doing, etc. This, I think we all need to take it with a pinch of salt and see how these things happen. I am not ruling out China trying to fish in the muddled waters. That can happen. But the whole issue did not start because of China, is what I wanted to cover. As far as the China-Pakistan the collusion is concerned, even during this particular incident that was happening, there were reports that the Chinese new aircraft Y-20 has landed in Skardu, 40 fighter aircraft of China has landed in Skardu, 20,000 troops of Pakistan have mobilized into Gilgit-Baltistan. All of them are lies, pure lies. Nothing happened. If you see Gilgit-Baltistan, if they can absorb 2 divisions, then they will be somewhere else. I mean, these rumors came out and everybody started believing it. That is not to say that China and Pakistan will not cooperate with each other. They will. They will cooperate with each other in the sense that Pakistan may supply them with information. They may increase the terrorist activities in J&K. Those kind of things will definitely happen. But I am not expecting a full-blown, two-sided war coming on to us at this point in time. But by the way, the two-front war is nothing new to India. We have been discussing it for the last 15 years. Our own chiefs of army staffs have made statements on this. The first time the statement was made in 2007 or 8 by General Deepak Kapoor, who was the chief of army staff that time. We have war-gamed it in many of our war games, how to deal with this. I would request the audience to rest assured that these things are well catered for, and if push comes to shove, we will handle that. There is no problem on that. As far as the tit-for-tat military might is concerned, there is a problem here. But if you look at the history which I explained to you at the beginning of this session, you find that the Chinese claims are coming into the Indian territory. In the history of this, we have never staked a claim on Chinese territory. So therefore, if you have to do a tit-for-tat now, you are actually going into Chinese territory. You are going to invite a massive retaliation, for which we should be prepared for if we want to do that. Not that we can't do it, but the issue is we need to weigh this very, very carefully before we go into such options. The next thing is on the Tibet, recognition of Tibet. Now, this is not the first time that this question is coming up. We recognized Tibet Autonomous Region as part of India somewhere in the mid-60s, not now. And from that time onwards, we also actually supported this One China policy till about 2010. From 2010 onwards, we have stopped making the statement on One China policy in any of the joint statement that they make. Prior to that, yes, we did. So slowly and steadily, we have conveyed to the Chinese that if you don't support a One India policy, you will not get support on the One China policy. So that point is well understood by the Chinese. So slowly and steadily, instead of saying we recognize Tibet as a separate country, like the bill that has been moved in the US Senate to pass that, we recognize Tibet as a different country, we don't have to go back on what we said, but we can do things in other matters to ensure that this matter is conveyed to the Chinese. The SR level talks, etc. Please understand the statement like, China has resolved the boundary with 12 countries, only India and Bhutan are left, they don't want to resolve the boundary. Please understand, gentlemen, only one thing, gentlemen and ladies, only one thing, that if at all we negotiate anything and come to a conclusion, please understand the area that you lose, the territory that you lose will be Indians. So we should not be in a hurry to do this. We need to think through this carefully and we need to take our time. There is no need to hurriedly do this in any form. The other thing is on the revision of investments, etc. Now, investments, we also have actually dealing them. Please understand the year 1998, when we decided to dealing two things. One, China-Pakistan relations, China-India relations being subservient to China-Pakistan relations, we delinked. Second thing we delinked was, let us keep the boundary issue aside. Let us make the progress on the bilateral relations in other fields, like economy. That is how you got into the state dispute. trade deficit. Trade we can do, culture we can do, people to people contact we can do, student exchange programs we can do. We have been doing all that. So we have also actually de-linked both. The only thing is the activity that we do otherwise is not visible in the public domain. Therefore, people tend to confuse that everything is subservient to the boundary issue. Mutual distrust. Yes. To remove the mutual distrust, we have got into a lot of things. I explained to you about the 1996 Conference Building Measure Agreement. We also did a 2013 Border Defense Cooperation Agreement. In between these, we also organized a number of activities to ensure the mutual trust between the forces that are facing each other. How did we do that? Take your mind back to 2007 hand-in-hand exercise. Hand-in-hand exercises started in 2007. They have been going intermittently depending on the relationship, but they have been continuing. Border games have been organized. Border exercises in Ladakh have happened between the border forces facing each other. We did a number of activities to improve the mutual trust. But when such events happen now, as it happened in May and June, all these things then go back. You'll have to restart this process again. So this is a difficult process. It is going to take time. It is not that we have not been able to do it, but we will have to continue to make efforts to do this. That is what I would like to say. Thank you.
Thank you, General. Just a few responses from my side on what you have said. More to compliment than anything else. On the investments from China, there's a common belief that there's so much that's been invested by China. When you look at the number of countries who have invested in India, China ranks 18th. It's not number 1. It's not number 2. It's 18th country that has invested in India. So there are others ahead of it, including Singapore. A small country like Singapore has more investments in India than China. You must remember this. Also, when you quantify this, it's only 3.1% of its GDP that has come out. Oh no, it's got a large share of GDP. But, this thing to say, no, what will we do if we dealing from China, will not get any investments, is not a fact anymore. Also, on the other issue of, the access being easier for Chinese to come in, is in fact a fact for worry because of the connectivity issues that we have, because of the slow development of our infrastructure in the border, they seem to have an advantage. But like General Narasimhan assures us, we are ready for this and we are prepared. In fact, for some things, maybe you'd like to respond later and tell us why we did not press ahead with the mountain code that we wanted to develop over here. So that's one thing. The other thing is that we've been talking vis-a-vis Pakistan in terms of a cold start. So the platoon, the terrain that you're talking about, would it give this kind of an option to China if push comes to shove because of the fact that they're able to come in? Unfortunately, today we do not have an Air Force representative with us, but there are some factors that I would like to bring out on this, on the deployment. As you all have seen, the MiGs, the Sukhois, the Apaches and all that were deployed. Thankfully, we have the DBO, the Advanced Landing Ground, where we already carried out many landings of including the Globemaster, the heavy lift aircraft which can bring in tanks and all that. So the air bridge is active and intact. Likewise, we also carried out many exercises in Car Nicobar, Port Blair, etc. for operation of our fighter aircraft. I would feel that we should have already deployed them in large number from Andaman Nicobar, which is the only tri-services command and a theater command that we have. And also Air Force, as far as India is concerned, as has been brought out by many Air Force officers who served there, we enjoy terrain advantage here, unlike the other aspects, because our aircraft from here can take off with a larger payload, because most of them are at 2,000, 3,000 or 5,000, where the payload carrying capacity is much higher. Whereas all the airfields in the Tibet Plateau are located at 12 to 14,000 feet, which means that he has to take off with either less fuel or with less ammunition. And also, at that rarefied atmosphere, there are serious issues of operation. So the tanker will have to always be there, which itself is a vulnerable target the moment you bring in the AWACS and all that. So that is the nature of air warfare, which will unfold when it comes to this. So, since a lot of Air Force and Army issues have been covered, only thing on Navy I would like to bring out, being a Navy man, is that please remember in 1971, Navy came of age. was able to have a effective blockade. I'm not saying that you can do it today because the maritime environment in the North Arabian Sea has become complex. You could have a Chinese submarine and a Pakistani submarine together operating there, making it difficult for India to exercise its sea denial and sea control operations. But please remember, even in Kargil, I was the Chief Staff Officer Operations in Southern Naval Command, and we had the complete Eastern Fleet rounding Sri Lanka and being deployed in the Western Front to put pressure on Pakistan because the internal analysis from many Pakistani strategic analysts tells you that they were worried about another blockade that could be implemented if Kargil slipped into the maritime domain. So today, I feel, it's my personal opinion, that we should have activated our fighter bases in Kargil and in Port Blair and have your maritime aircraft operating. Luckily, we have an excellent aircraft in the P8I, which is also being used by the Army. Coincidentally, I was the first commanding officer of INS Rajali, and we have contracted for 20 P8Is that are going to be here. This is the Poseidon aircraft. In fact, India was only the second naval aviation service to operate this. So we have a phenomenal capability. Chinese have been coming in a big way into the Indian Ocean region, and they have. I'm very fond of using this term, tyranny of distance. If he has to come all the way from, Shanghai or any other place, he has to come cover tens of thousands of kilometers, and then coming to through the states of Malacca or many other options which are available. I'm not going to the details. It's not a presentation on the Navy that we'll be doing tomorrow when we have another webinar. So those of you who are free can join that tomorrow. But the point here is that China has a geographical disadvantage, and we are blessed with geography, and we need to be able to leverage this for applying enough pressure. So none of the submarines included cannot transit out of the states of Malacca and Singapore, which is called SOMS, because we have the Tri-Services Command and we have the watchful eyes of the Indian Navy and the Coast Guard. And so we need to strengthen the C4ISR architecture manifold. But in such times of crisis, to put pressure on them, I feel that Tri-Services Command should be in the forefront of applying. Now, Quad has become a reality, and whether people like it or not, whether China is not happy about this alliance, we need to ensure that Quad not only discharges its responsibility in the maritime domain, but also becomes an effective instrument of what we routinely refer to as HADR, as humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. So these are some of the points I wanted to bring out in terms of both the capability of the Air Force, the Navy, which is an instrument of foreign policy, which all need to be used in tandem to apply the required kind of pressure. China is aware. China is very worried about how India will use Andaman Nicobar to strike its advances into the Indian Ocean region, which is why it also acquired Djibouti, a military base in Africa. It wants bases in Godar. It's already got Hambantota, a captive port for 99 years. The reason why it's coming through the economic road into Bangladesh, Myanmar, is to ensure that it has a footprint in the Bay of Bengal and in the Arabian Sea to further its strategic, economic, and political interests. General Narasimhan, would you like to comment on this?
No, this perfectly fine. What you said, I totally endorse that. You see, the issue that comes up is we keep talking about some Chinese submarine coming and docking somewhere, they're passing through somewhere. Please understand, the moment they cross the Malacca Strait, they are under our observation. That is something that we need to understand. And in fact, we send a friendly message to them. Welcome to the Indian Ocean from the Indian Navy. So that they are aware, that they are being followed and monitored. And the thing about Indian Navy is its capabilities are enormous. Even the Chinese actually used to be envious of the Indian Navy. In fact, in 2004, when I was traveling in a taxi in Beijing, that time the driver, I was talking to the driver in Chinese, and that guy says, you have a wonderful Navy. I asked him, why have you said this? He said that I'm an old Navyman from the PLA Navy, and we always envy you for having an aircraft carrier right from the 50s. So he says you have enormous capabilities and we are envious of you. They have also assessed our fighting that has happened in 65, 71 and 99. And they have understood that Indian armed forces are no pushovers. And they also know that Indian Navy is a formidable opposition for them as far as Indian Ocean region is concerned. So I think with these remarks, I think I would like to hand it back to Commodore Vasan.
Thank you, General. I think all this is very reassuring. We also seem to know what we need to do, but we must have the will to do it. So I think there are no more questions from the audience. Ramesh, if you could kindly take over and conduct the balance proceedings.
Yeah. Thank you, Commodore Vasan, and thank you, General Narasimhan. It's our pleasure and honor to have you here. And I think you have answered many unanswered questions. I think it would remove a lot of doubts that different people would have, or those who have got misguided by the so-called mainstream media. So thank you so much. I'm sure this is this session. I'm sure a lot of people will be watching beyond what who, the participants here. And thank you so much. Of course, we will have a follow-up program as well. As Commodore suggested, I think we need to go with an advertisement as well next time and have our discussion further. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Commodore Vasan, sir.
Thank you, General Narasimhan, and all the audience and the organizers for this wonderful opportunity. We look forward to many more such events. And let's continue to support what we make in India.
Jai Hind.
Definitely. Jai Hind. Jai Hind.